Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. Hope you're well. Want to go over an article from Zero Hedge talking about or debunking this insane narrative from the mainstream media and the central planners that this is a pandemic of the unmedicated, we'll call it. Got a lot of statistics and numbers. You guys know that's complete nonsense, but we got a lot of statistics and numbers that really back this up. And then what I wanted to do is take some calls, but not to answer your questions. What I'd like to do is take some calls, and Josh has got the link up in the chat right now. But I'd like to take some calls and actually have a friendly debate with some viewers. And I want to have a debate with some viewers who think they can argue the point as to why we should not have medicine mandates. And what I'm going to do is put on my CNN hat and I am going to debate for medicine mandates. So why do I want to do this? Because I truly believe that in order to have a very sharp, educated opinion and to be able to argue for your position, you need to be able to argue the other side better than they can. And I think this is a kind of a training tool that we can all use. So when we run across someone, maybe your friend and family member Fred, who has this view that we should have mandates, that you can have a rebuttal for that, which not only makes sense, but actually will resonate with them. And I think that if you can practice not only sharpening your own position through statistics, through facts, but also kind of trial and error. And then you can also understand the view of the person who actually believes we should have mandates. Then that will help us all as a group open up more people's eyes as to the dangers of these mandates and why we should value freedom, liberty, and free market capitalism. So I think that would be kind of a fun back and forth. Hopefully that makes sense. But before we get there, let's get into this Zero Hedge article. And I know I'm just going to get completely crushed with ads. So you'll have to bear with me. Oh, good old Zero Hedge. The Lancet Skull, and this is a very prestigious medical publication, as far as I know, scolds those claiming, and there we go, scolds those claiming this is a pandemic of the unmedicated. Long before the vast majority of the new scariant cases were among the medicated, the CDC director, Walensky, admitted in early October that the cerveza sickness medicine did not prevent transmission. So then they still came out and said this is a pandemic of the unmedicated. And here you go. Here's the headline right there. But they had, according to this article, they had they had a post in the Lancet. Let me just read this here to make sure I'm getting it right. The phrase implies that the medicines are a panacea against the cerveza sickness, and I would agree. I think the average CNN viewer and the position that I'm going to actually argue sees the core of that belief system is that the medicine is a panacea, and anyone who refuses to take it is just part of the problem. But an irresponsible idiot who does not follow the science. There you go. So in late November, the Lancet published a letter from Gunter Kampf, is his name. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he is a researcher at the University of Greifswald in Germany. And let's see, he absolutely just basically says this is complete nonsense. And so then he gives statistics in his rationale for why having this view or this narrative pushed by the mainstream media is dangerous. So he says there is increasing evidence that medicated individuals continue to have relevant role in transmission, and he lists some studies here. Uh, and let's see, I don't want to go through these studies. I want to keep it YouTube friendly here. You guys can read through these statistics. But in the USA, a total of 10,662 cerveza sickness cases were reported in medicated people by April 30th. So this was very early on when very few people were fully medicated, as the definition was back then. We know that's a moving target. Of whom 2,725, 26% were asymptomatic, 995 were hospital, 9.7%, and 1.6% passed. So the reason I wanted to point this out is I know these numbers were, it's a very small group here, relatively speaking, but I would assume that if you actually looked at the numbers for the unmedicated, as far as the fatality rate, it would be pretty darn close to this. So I know the numbers have changed significantly, but just I think that's something that people should really dive into. And this is another reason why we have to look at absolute numbers and not just percentages. Because let's just say the absolute number for those who chose not to get the medicine was 2% instead of 1.6%. Well, then what the mainstream media would say is that, well, you're far better off to have the medicine, or the probability of you having serious complications is much decreased with the medicine. But they're not telling you that it's a decrease from 2% to 1.6. And I'm not saying that's not worth taking the medicine. I'm just saying that you can't do a proper cost benefit analysis by just assuming that it's quote unquote better. Well, okay, how much better? Because then you need to quantify the actual cost as well. So it goes on to say that people who have the medicine are still lower risk, severe consequences, but are still a relevant part of the cerveza sickness. I think this goes without saying. This is pretty obvious. And these, my goodness, these ads are driving me crazy. But that's pretty much the gist of the story. If you want to read it, it gives, and here it is right here. I think they link to it. So you guys can see all the statistics and the data that back up his case, which at surface level, I think should be pretty obvious that this is a pandemic that everyone is a victim to in one way or the other, especially because of the government's response to it. And to say that it's just one group or the other, that's completely disingenuous, and it doesn't, quote unquote, follow the science. So now let's go back here. So there's no one that wants to debate me. All right. Well, maybe this is going to be a big flop, Josh. Josh and I thought it would be a great idea, but not if no one wants to debate me. I thought everyone would line up to take the position of why we should not have mandates. But I guess I could review kind of the main position of someone who I think would argue for a mandate. And that's just this overly simplistic view. I kind of wrote it down here. I talked about this, I think, in a video the other day, that they just see this the medicines as quote unquote safe. So if they're safe, why wouldn't you take them? You got to be an idiot. And they're not only safe, but they're effective. So if they're safe and effective, if you don't want to take the medicine, then that just means you're an idiot. That just means that you're a selfish rube. That just means that you have no conscience because you're trying to, you're not considering the greater good. You're not considering the health of society at large. Yeah. So John. Oh boy. All right. I guess I don't know what looks like John was in his bathroom or something. I don't know. I don't know what was going to go on there, Josh. But all righty then. So I guess we'll get back to kind of their overly simplistic view and how I think they would debate this and the position that I was going to take. And that it's safe, it's effective, and the sickness, hey, it's dangerous. It's not the flu. This is dangerous what we're dealing with. And okay, what does dangerous mean? Define that, right? And then they say, well, by doing this XYZ, whether it's wearing masks, it doesn't work. The masks work. Therefore, if they work, if you use them, then you're saving lives. And therefore, if you don't use them, you want to kill people. This is pretty much their rationale. And that's why you see not just one, but many people in Puerto Rico where they have full on drunk the Kool-Aid, actually wearing masks when they're driving around on a motorcycle. Driving around in a mask. There you go. Why? Because masks work. And if masks work, then by driving around on a motorcycle wearing a mask, I am saving lives. And that's because I'm a humanitarian and I care about other people. And if you don't wear a mask when you're outside because masks work, then that means that you want to kill people. This is the mindset we're dealing with here, guys. So the root of the problem is that these people completely ignore nuance. They ironically ignore science. They ignore absolute numbers. They don't look into it. Now, why? Is it because of cognitive dissonance? Is it because their politics have become religion? Or is it all of the above? It's probably a little bit of everything. But I think once you understand it, once you understand their view, it better helps you kind of open their eyes up to reality. And although you're not going to change everyone's opinion, it gives you a better set of tools to at least change the view of the people who are receptive and actually have an open mind. And I think there's a lot of those people out there. I do not think that the average CNN viewer, every single one of them has a very closed mind. I just think that's a vocal minority. So, all right, Josh. Well, I guess we'll leave it there. No one wants to debate me. Okay, guys, make sure that you're always standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism. We'll see you on the next video.